Hi, I'm Deborah Vinsel, and you're watching Mission Nonprofit. Each month, we connect with local organizations and agencies that are making a positive impact in our communities. Today, we've invited Javoen Byrd from the Hawk Foundation to talk about their work. Thanks for joining us, Javoen. I know it's a little bit awkward because normally we would have people in the studio, but because of COVID, we're obviously meeting with you on a Zoom link, and I'm in the studio here by myself. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, definitely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us, the Hawk Foundation was not an organization I was really, I
Right.
had much, I didn't know much about them. So tell us about the Hawk Foundation's history and how you started, how it came about.
Right. So the full name of is the Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture, and by African culture we mean like basic cultures of African descent. It started about 3 years ago. We had a fiscal sponsor. Our fiscal sponsor was actually Media Island International,
Mm-hmm.
a nonprofit based in Olympia. And the goal of the nonprofit was actually to implement diverse education. I personally am an ethnomusicologist. I have had my undergrad at UW and then my master's at the University of Washington. And I study West African music, specifically the Yoruba music from Nigeria, from the Yoruba tribe of the Southwest region of Nigeria, and look at the effects of West African music within the United States. Meaning that I'm an anthropologist. So I study just the relationship between African and African American music and how that's
Mm-hmm.
also permeated throughout the whole U.S. culture.
Mm-hmm.
So for me personally, I grew up, in Washington State, and I recognized that early on that there was definitely some things that were missing in the school curriculum, or things that I wished that were that students had more access to. I was very interested in African American history, but not phrasing it as a form of education that's taught as an additive.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at it and saying, well, this is actually one of the bedrocks of the American society
Right.
community, right? In American history, and really connecting, and then that caused me to spread and just look at other diverse histories, like for instance, Chinese history in the
Mm-hmm.
United States in the 1800s, and just go further. Then I became a history nut. So I was always that guy in high school who would go ahead and read, read everything that was required, and then go ahead and read actually books that might, scholarly articles
Mm-hmm.
or books, and bring it back to the class and say, okay, well, why aren't we studying this? Why aren't we studying
Right.
this? and, and so in college, I actually, at the Evergreen State College, I became one of the head coordinators for the Black Student Union, and we were really focused on bringing African American history, African American musics. I focused on ethnomusicology, so a lot of my work was around that. I went back and forth to Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a group of friends who are also really invested in bringing that history and that education. I actually. Mhm.
So you've been with the Hawk Foundation since its inception. Were you part of the
Right.
growth
So
of
so
it?
I'm basically I'm the founder. And then we created the board. So this is so then basically, as history goes on, I said, hey, I really would like an organization that would turn into an institution for this kind of history and education, be able to provide supplementary
Yeah.
education for Washington State.
So, given your background in ethnomusicology and your desire to bring a broader education platform to the community, how does that define the Hawk Foundation's mission? What is your mission?
Right. So the mission is definitely to bring multicultural education into Thurston County. Also provide healing space for the African American community using African modalities, and how my experience plus the experience of our board members. We have a few professors. We have an individual. Her name is Sheila Smith, who's actually has a master's in public health. So it's implementing that scholarly and that health focus into understanding that education in general can be healing. It goes beyond, it's one, it illuminates your world, but also like also kinesthetic forms of education, such as like African drum facilitation, various forms, also have a lot of therapeutic benefits as well.
Sure. So, how do you manifest that? How does the work of the Hawk Foundation, how do you manifest that
Right.
in the community? What kinds of things do you do?
So there's been we've had partnerships prior with Timberland Library System. So we traveled around the Olympia branch, Lacey, and just traveled around and did African storytelling and even lectures on African American history within the libraries. We've actually expanded to King County over the year. Created we've created connections with the Nisqually tribe as well, where we've actually come and shared and talked about, from an ethnomusicological perspective, the similarities of how African drumming, the uses and purposes of African drumming within African communities, and looking at the similarities between that within our indigenous First Peoples here as well communities. We've worked before in the past with a few local nonprofits. I'm working in the schools. We've been in Lydia Hawk teaching African American music and African music for after school programs. So it's been a focus on just implementing getting scholarly research and implementing these programs within various education institutions. We've also had the pleasure of working with the SPSEC and also the Evergreen State College.
So do you primarily work with elementary students, or what's your audience for your services and projects?
It's honestly, we've done K through 12, yes, but we also have engaged the older adult population as well. So we've worked in the universities, colleges. We're actually right now working on doing a collaboration with the Evergreen State College and talking about how we can provide a multicultural education experience for the students and how that can actually spread throughout the various universities. We, as I mentioned before, did a program with SPSEC, which was an Afro folkloric program where we went through various African American and African cultural elements, and we were live streamed throughout the whole entire SPSEC community.
Mm-hmm. So if I were to be in the classroom when you came in, what kinds of things would I experience?
So I'm a real champion of a kinesthetic experience. So definitely you would get a chance to make music yourself through percussion, maybe hand, maybe even a song or two. But and also, sometimes I bring in drums. But one of the other things, or one of our teachers may. But one of the things that I also make sure that students take away is the understanding of how music and culture actually interact with each other. So a lot of students sometimes there might not be a musical component or a strong musical component to it, but it's more historical. But I talk about how those historical influences still impact us today in contemporary society. For instance, one of the topics that I lecture about, or that we really talk about, are the slave codes in the United States of 1741, and understanding why the United States, unlike the Caribbean, which actually have a stronger, richer Afro-folkloric Afro-folkloric presence of drums and even songs that might hail from Africa, but also have maybe a strong Spanish or French influences may have. And those slave codes in 1739, there was a huge rebellion in South Carolina called the Stoner Rebellion, and which led to where they actually utilized ngoma drums, which come from the Congo, and the enslaved Africans there ended up becoming apprehended. But because the enslavers recognized how powerful the drums were as far as people remembering who they were, communicating to each other. In 1741, they actually banned African drums throughout the United States. And they didn't become repopularized until the 50s, where a Nigerian drummer by the name of Baba Tunde Olutunji came to the United States, and he spread West African drumming across the country. So even understanding that and seeing the differences between, looking at it in a comparative format of United States culture and even the relationship of African Americans and the greater United States with African musics, as opposed to a place like Cuba. Right. Or even in the American territory, Puerto Rico.
Right. What are some of your favorite parts about working with, especially with young kids? What have been some of your favorite experiences working with the K through 12 group?
I love, and especially in the elementary, I just love how full of energy those that they are. Especially with in the elementary groups, I always make sure to bring some sort of percussion instruments because of the energy and just for them to have that experience. And whenever they see the drums, their eyes start to light up. I might teach them a song. Like I might teach them like the 7 days of the week in Yoruba and teach them a song with that. And then just to see that those kids get it within literally 10 to 15 minutes. And so now I have a full classroom of kids singing Yoruba, drumming, smiling. So that's definitely heartwarming.
Great. So, do you have classes? Are there I know this is, in our environment right now, and schools still being primarily remote. Are you working with schools right now? Do you have classes scheduled that people or teachers might be interested in?
So what we're right now for Black History Month, we do have a few projects that we're working on. Actually, Lacey's gonna have their cultural, and that's more in March. They're gonna have their a cultural festival, and we're actually signed up for that to do demonstrations. Um, and we're also going to have a few projects with King County Library System as far as Black History Month celebration. We're currently right now undertaking a few other projects virtual wise. We've worked in the past with Lake Wild Gardens, and we actually filmed a whole education initiative project with them where they've been actually live streaming it through Pierce County schools. The Glass Museum also had a project where they were doing heroes throughout history, and they wanted some diverse heroes. So they actually asked us to come in and even give talk about some archetypes from Yoruba culture and some heroic like African American figures. And so we pre-recorded that, and that's also live streaming throughout Pierce County.
Traditional Yoruba deities, there's many kinds. There's Oya, Shango, gods of thunder and lightning, Ogun, the deity of iron and war, and also Badara of wisdom and intelligence.
And so what we're right now focused on are not in class projects, but projects that are actually pre-recorded, and then they're able to be streamed throughout various school districts for the leisure of teachers.
Okay. Do you have a focus for 2021, even though we're still in pandemic mode and we're going to be transitioning out of that? Is there a focus for the Hawk Foundation in 2021?
There is. So we're really this focus because of the lives. Honestly, COVID has pushed us to not focus as like we can to not focus on in-class programming, but more virtual recording. So what we've been doing is we've been doing a lot of traveling around, meeting with various professors and studying various elements of African American history that we think that teachers within Thurston County and the greater Washington State would actually benefit from. And so we're developing videos, we're doing interviews and lectures so that we can actually live stream those throughout our city and throughout also the school districts.
Great. So how can people get involved? Do you need volunteers? Are there ways people can sign up for classes?
Yes. So if you visit our website at hfeducation.org, you'll see also an email for info@hfeducation.org. You can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, and two, you can actually reach out directly to us through info. And if you want to reach out directly to me, my email is Javoen@hfeducation.org. JAVOEN@hfeducation.org. And I'm always happy to have community involvement. And you can find out about our past projects that we've been working on. Our mission statement is there, and how to contact us directly. We also every few weeks we update the website to show the projects that we're going to be working on in the future. So if you check in about 2 weeks, you'll see also some of our future programs.
Okay. And how can people donate?
So if you click onto our website, you'll see a button that says donate to our nonprofit. So you click on that and you can donate there.
And we encourage people to provide support. Do you have any other things? Is there anything that we've missed that you would like to circle back to and make sure people know about the Hawk Foundation?
Well, if there are any teachers who are watching this right now who would like maybe a specialized program or even to look at some of our pre-recorded curriculum, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to share.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, Javoen. I really appreciate you being with us on this edition of the special Black History Month edition of Mission Nonprofit. Well, that's our program for now. Please visit the website for the Hawk Foundation at hfeducation.org. You can also find them on Facebook at the Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture. Watch Mission Nonprofit on Channel 77 on Sundays at 4:30 p.m., Tuesdays at 6 p.m., Thursdays at 7:30 p.m., Fridays at noon, and Saturdays at 2:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. You can also catch us online at TCMedia.org. Thanks for watching this edition of Mission Nonprofit. We'll see you next time.